Okay, all right, everyone. So, I'm always reminded when people leave straight away. There could be many reasons for that. Maybe they're busy, they have just come from meditation or whatever. But I always think people, they come here, they think Ajahn Brahm is going to give a talk, and if Ajahn Brahm is not here, then they just disappear. Because this happened to me. I remember when last year I was in Poland, and I was traveling around the country, giving talks in many different cities. And there was always these really large crowds. You had like 200 people, 300 people, like really large for a country that is kind of less Buddhist than Australia, I would say. And so I asked the organizer, "Wow, it's really impressive, this crowd." They said, "Yeah, they can't really distinguish between Brahmali and Brahm. They thought you were Ajahn Brahm coming, so that's why there's so many people coming here." I was really disappointed when I heard that. Really unfair. So anyway, I think that it was suggested to me that precisely this is a good opportunity to talk a little bit about Ajahn Brahm. Lehar has very kindly organized all of these events up to his 50th anniversary. Ajahn Brahm's 50th anniversary as a monk is coming up on the 5th of December, right? Okay, thank you, Eddie, for correcting me on that one. 5th of December. So isn't that kind of extraordinary? 50 years as a Buddhist monk. There's something very powerful about that, really extraordinary about that. The majority of monks that come to the monastery and they kind of disappear, the majority disappear very quickly within a couple of weeks, and there's a few more who last a little bit longer, and people last a bit longer. But there's only a tiny minority who last for 50 years. Really small minority. And those who usually last for 50 years, because they haven't got anything else to do anyway. So that's kind of why they're not sure what to do with themselves. And that's kind of fascinating, because Ajahn Brahm is not like that. It's not like as if he doesn't have anything else to do with his life. And to me, it's really worthy of celebrating in a very profound way. The idea that someone can live a life which is so restrained, there's so many things you can't do with your life as a monk, as a nun, it's really worthy of celebrating, because what it shows, it points to something more profound. It points to life having something more than just the ordinary humdrum things that we do with our life. There's something more there. There's something really profound going on. When you see the people, the monastics who live in the jungle or live in the kuti, who are always happiest when they are by themselves, when they have nothing to do, there's nothing, nothing is going on. That's when they're most happy. It's almost the exact opposite of the world. Then there's something very beautiful about that. There is a promise of something more, a promise of life having some depth, some profundity to it, that the majority of us are not really accessing properly. And that's great, because it gives hope. It gives a sense of life has something more to it. And so I'm very glad that Lehar is one of these people, lots of initiatives, she does all kinds of things. It's wonderful to have an operations manager like that. And we're very lucky to have some really good people to run the Buddhist Society, including Lehar and many others as well, such as our president over here and ex-president just next door there, which is wonderful, a wonderful thing. So it's great, and it's really worthy of celebrating. So I thought today, Lehar suggested we have like a month of talks before we come to the main occasion, which will be the 1st of December. That's a Sunday. That's kind of a few days before the actual day. And so starting today, talk a little bit about who Ajahn Brahm is, what he means to me specifically. What it is like to have someone like Ajahn Brahm as your teacher. And why did I choose him? What are the qualities that I personally see him in that are worthy? Someone who takes someone as a teacher, you should look for someone who is worthy to be a teacher. That's a very important point. And so I started out, if you may not know, but I'm actually Norwegian by birth. You can probably detect that slight accent there. That's slightly funny way of speaking. Well, that's the Norwegian accent that is coming out. I'm never going to get rid of it, unfortunately. It's always going to be there, so please forgive me for speaking with such a way. I've been in Australia half my life, but I still have got a Norwegian accent, so what to do? So I started out in Norway, and my family actually lived in the UK for a very long time, and so I also lived in the UK. And I started out like many people at university. I started out doing some meditation practice, reading some books on spirituality, these kind of things. This was back in the 1980s. Don't calculate how old that means I am. Don't think about it. It's ancient. That's what it means. That was back in the 1980s. And then I kind of had automatically a very kind of natural interest in spirituality and the development of the mind and what true happiness is in life and all of these kind of things. And there came a point in my life when I was living in England at this time. I was studying again, and I wasn't really happy with my studies. I'm not going to tell you what I studied because it's so embarrassing to say what I studied that I don't want the public to know. So you're never going to, actually you probably will know anyway, but I was going to say. So I was studying this thing I didn't really enjoy, and then these ideas of the meditation I had when I was young in Norway came back to me, and I decided, okay, maybe I should go and try to find a Buddhist monastery somewhere. Because that was kind of where my mind was always been inclining towards those things. But I had no idea where to go. I didn't know any Buddhist monasteries. I was a Norwegian. Well, I knew a lot about skiing, but nothing about Buddhist monasteries. And so the way I found a Buddhist monastery, in those days you had those telephone directories. Is anyone here remembers those telephone directories? Yeah, remember those? Okay, those kind of big fat books with tiny print. Yeah, and they had all the phone numbers and had the names and whatever, and it was all alphabetical order. And so I went to this telephone and I go, look under B here. Yeah, B, U, D, D, H, Buddhist. And then came up the Buddhist Society of London came up. Yeah, so I called the Buddhist Society. I say, well, hello, are there any Buddhist monasteries around here? This was in England at the time. And I said, oh yeah, there are these kind of nice monasteries not so far from where you live. It's called Chithurst Buddhist Monastery. Yeah, Chithurst Buddhist Monastery is like another monastery in the Ajahn Chah tradition. This was in England. It's still there today, in the present day. And so this is what they said. And so I thought, okay, let me check it out. So I went to Chithurst Buddhist Monastery, and that's kind of how my Buddhist career started. It's weird, isn't it? You just go to the telephone directory and you find the place. That's what you have to do when you are Norwegian, when all you know is kind of snow and cold and no idea about Buddhism. I didn't know, I don't think I even knew any people from Asia or anything about, at all. It was just really a very different kind of life. And so that's when I started out. And then I went to this monastery, Chithurst Monastery, and I kind of hung around for a while. I didn't really decide to ordain straight away or anything like that. This was back in 1992, 1993, something like that. And then as I was staying in this monastery, there's always, in monastery, there's always, like everywhere else, there's rumors going on, there's all kind of things happening, kind of slightly under the surface and these kind of things. And so one day I was given this talk by this monk. I never heard of this. I didn't know any monks. So I given this talk by this monk in a kind of hush kind of way, kind of under the table. Check this out. I made some friends already in the monastery. It was a young German monk. So I guess Norway, Germany, maybe some similarity. I don't know. So anyway, he said, check this out. And so I got this talk, and I listened to this talk, and I thought, wow. This is extraordinary. This is the kind of thing that I've been looking for. There was a feeling about this person that to me was really extraordinary. A sense of directness, a sense of confidence about what he was talking about, but not in a bragging way, in a kind of natural way. A sense of kindness in the way he spoke, a sense of peace. You felt peaceful as you were listening to the words. It's not what you convey so much through your words, but what you convey through your actions, through the way you are, that is often much more important. And as I listened to this talk, it was like this kind of something lit up inside of me. And I had the feeling I want to know more about this monk and who this is. And of course, that monk turned out to be none other than Ajahn Brahm. This was Ajahn Brahm. My first time I even heard about Ajahn Brahm. He was in Australia, I was in England. So that was the beginning, and straight away I was drawn to this. And I've always been the kind of person, I'm drawn to things that are not obvious, under the table, secret things, right? If someone is so special that the other people don't really want you to know about it, then I read straight away, you want to hear about this, and it becomes very interesting. Very often it turns out to be empty, but occasionally it's something very beautiful and profound. And so that was my first kind of introduction to Ajahn Brahm. And then later on, the same monk who gave me this particular talk, he had written a letter to Ajahn Brahm. And not so long after sending this letter, a few weeks later on, he got a reply. And this was kind of this other thing which I found really extraordinary. I don't know if you may have heard this story before, because I've talked about it before, I think. But what was so extraordinary is that this was just this young German monk that Ajahn Brahm had never heard of. Ajahn Brahm was already a senior monk in those days, already 20 years as a monk, even though this is over 30 years ago. And this young whippersnapper of a German monk, who was nobody to Ajahn Brahm, he writes this letter and demands an explanation on dependent origination. Dependent origination is like the most profound aspect of the Buddhist path. It has this long list of questions. This young German monk, he had a book of questions. He had this kind of whole pamphlet, and every time he thought, and he would write it into this book. And later on, when he came to Bodhinyana Monastery, he would take this book out, and he said to Ajahn Brahm, "Can I please come to your kuti tonight?" And Ajahn Brahm would see this book and he would say, not so sure. It's going to take a long time. There's a lot of questions in that book. He was that kind of monk, right? He was really he was very kind of forward about kind of asking questions and things. So anyway, in the UK, he wrote this letter and he got a response from Ajahn Brahm. And then, of course, he gave me that response because I was kind of his friend a little bit or whatever. And so he gave it to me. He said, check this out, under the table again. Have a look at this. Don't tell anyone else. Give it straight back to me, that kind of stuff. And so I saw this letter, and it was one of the most extraordinary things I had seen in my life. There were so many things about this letter that spoke about someone who is not the usual kind of person. The first thing that was really fascinating was precisely the fact, first of all, it was a long letter, it was like 10 pages, right? It was kind of tiny handwriting, this kind of extraordinary handwriting. 10 pages later. And it was, 10, that's a lot, especially when a very senior monk responds to a junior monk they don't even know about. It is just kind of someone who takes someone seriously that you don't have to take seriously. How often is that the seniors in our society, the people in power, take the ones lower down seriously in that way? It was a feeling of one human being connected to another human being. There was not this feeling of hierarchy or feeling more important or feeling part of the establishment or whatever it is and someone else being something less. No, it was a human being communicating to someone else, taking each other seriously, respecting each other regardless of all of these superficial differences that we have in our society. That was just so impressive to me. That's the kind of teacher I want to have. Someone who treats people the same. Someone who treats everyone with respect and understanding and compassion and all of these beautiful things. That's what I would like to see. So that was number one. That kind of really stood out about this letter that he sent to this young monk. The second thing that stood out was the erudition of the reply. It wasn't a reply like, this is my opinion, this is what I think about these things. No, it was like, okay, he started out, point one. It was very structured, right? Ajahn Brahm has this very structured mind, very structured, point 1a, point 1a, kind of 1, 2b. It looked more like a university thesis than a kind of a letter to a friend or whatever. And it was full of quotes from the suttas. I had already kind of been introduced to the suttas. The suttas are the word of the Buddha, right? It was full of quotes. So he would make an argument, then he would quote from the suttas, and then he would continue the argument, and he would quote another sutta to back up the previous one. And it all linked together into this beautiful chain of reasoning going over 10 handwritten pages. This was the days of handwriting, I was just flabbergasted by kind of the erudition and the understanding. There was nothing like that where I was at that time. In that monastery, I was at the time before that. And so that was kind of really also blew my mind. I thought, this is the kind of monk that I'm interested in. And then the last thing was the quality of the handwriting. I don't know if some of you may have seen Ajahn Brahm's handwriting, but if you haven't seen it, it's kind of extraordinary. After he came off his 6-month retreat, he had a 6-month retreat at Bodhinyana Monastery back in 2001. And at that time, he handwrote a book towards the end of that retreat. And that handwriting was once put out on auction. It's one of these extraordinary documents. It's more beautiful than a printed page. That's what it looks like. It has the consistency of a printed page. And that's what I saw when I saw this letter back in the UK. I saw this incredible calligraphy, this incredible consistency in writing. And it was almost as if you could see the samadhi, the stillness of the mind on the page of the person who was writing these things. So there were so many things coming together. The kindness of looking after someone very young. The erudition, the understanding, the going to the source of the teachings of Buddhism, and going back to the Buddha himself. And finally, the qualities that came out through the consistency of the writing. All of these can come together. And then, in addition to that, I had also already, as I mentioned before, already heard a talk by Ajahn Brahm. And so I decided, this is what I want to do. I want to go to this monastery. I want to take this person as my teacher. And so then what did I do? Well, then I kind of went to the senior monk in the monastery and said, I think I'd like to go to Australia. And they were kind of really trying to put me off. You're just being restless. You don't really, what's the point of going to Australia? And all of these kind of things. They weren't too happy to hear that. And that's always like that, right? If someone wants to do something else, people are not too happy with it. But I didn't really care all that much. I was pretty stubborn, I suppose. So one day I decided to just pick up the phone, and I just kind of picked up the phone, called this monk, Ajahn Brahm, called this monastery in Australia, and said, "Oh, is that Ajahn Brahm?" "Yes," said the other end. "Oh, can I come to Australia?" And he said, "Who are you?" "What do you mean come to Australia?" And so I just said, I'm so-and-so, and I'm living in a monastery over here, and can I come to Australia? And what did he say there? He said, "Yes, you can come." Again, this kind of extraordinary thing, you're this kind of sense of trust, this sense of feeling that it doesn't matter who you are. We will allow everyone in over here. I don't know anything about you, but if you want to come here, that's really a good sign already. So come to Australia. And then they gave me some information about visas and that kind of stuff. And then eventually I made my way all the way here to Australia. So this is how random it was for me, right? It's really kind of random. So you may think that it feels to me completely natural that I'm here, but it's also really random. First of all, the dictionary, the white pages, they're looking through BUDD, and then kind of just a call to Australia, can I come? And here I am, and this is kind of the history behind this. But now it feels completely natural, and it feels like a very good decision that I made. I never really regretted making this move all the way to Australia. I don't really know much about Australia, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that. I've been living here for 30 years. I know Bodhinyana Monastery really well. I know this Buddha Center really well. I know the airport quite well. I traveled a bit too much. But kind of Australia is still a bit of a mystery to me, Australian society. That's kind of cool. You become this kind of homeless in a sense. It's a Buddhist teaching that really is the critical factor that took me here to this country. So I really like Australia, by the way. I like Australians, but I don't really have all that much feeling for it. So this is how I ended up here, and it was, I think, a really good move. And I remember coming to Bodhinyana Monastery. I came on the day before Ajahn Brahm's birthday, the 6th of August 1994. So I've been here for just over 30 years now. And coming in, and it was quite cold, and Ajahn Brahm could see I was kind of shivering, and he said something to the effect, "Oh, you get some clothes and we'll kind of look after you," or, it's warming up soon. That was the 6th of August, it was still kind of winter time at that time. And so his kindness and a sense of looking after you kind of came out from the beginning. And this is one of these qualities that I discovered very early with Ajahn Brahm, this generosity of spirit. There's always this willingness to help out, this willingness to do things, this willingness to work incredibly, incredibly hard. I don't know if you have any idea. You think that monk's life is kind of all about sitting on your bottom and kind of watching your breath, but actually a monk's life can be much, much more than that, and especially Ajahn Brahm's life. Ajahn Brahm's life was basically a life of building a monastery. For the first 10 years of his monastic life in Australia was about building up a monastery. And he worked, and he worked, and he worked tirelessly. And he told me that the way he did this, sometimes kind of the thought came up, maybe I should complain, I haven't got enough time for my meditation. But no, he said, the way I did it, he said to me, is that I always ask myself, have I used every minute of the day to its kind of maximum potential? And as long as I hadn't used every single minute of the day to the maximum potential, I wasn't going to complain to the senior monk who was Ajahn Jagaro on those days. That was how he lived his life. This extraordinary willingness to give. He's a very, very giving person. It's a beautiful aspect of Ajahn Brahm. And you see that in your daily interactions with Ajahn Brahm. You can see that one of the ways you know that is that when you sit next to Ajahn Brahm, if he has something special, like he's been given some special food, for example, he'll always pass it on to you. And he'll say, oh, would you like some of this? He will very rarely eat something special if he has something special and not actually share with somebody else. And because Ajahn Brahm is so loved by the community and so loved by so many people, people will often offer him special things. Often they come up with a big breakfast tray. I'm not sure if it's that size or this size, but it's like a big one. With all the kind of his favorite things, tea, whatever, that kind of stuff. And then he will pass it down to the monks and share these things. Always that kind of thing. Always doing that. And if one monk is kind of looking at his tray a little bit, then he picks up on that and says, oh, would you like something on my tray? Oh, yeah, thank you, Ajahn. Passing it down. So this is kind of how he is, very generous, always giving. If you invite Ajahn Brahm somewhere, if he has any opportunity to go there, to a country, to a house or whatever, he will go if he can, if he isn't completely exhausted. If he can do anything to support you, he will do that. One of the amazing things, that this may sound really kind of extraordinary if you don't actually live in a monastery. As monks, this is one of the things Ajahn Brahm does. He said this very recently, actually, at one of our Patimokkha meetings, I think. This is when we do the recitation of the monastic rules. And he said that if you ever need anything, and I have it in my kuti. Kuti is like the hut we live in. You are always welcome to go and take whatever is there. Go into my room and take whatever is there if you need it. Did you ever say that to anyone? If you need, please come into my house, take whatever you want. And then the furniture is all gone the next day. That's kind of that's a bit unfortunate, isn't it, if that happens? But this is one of those strange things about the way that monasticism has been lived in Buddhism for 2,500 years. There's a special word for this in the Vinaya Pitaka, as the monastic rules. It's called visasa. And visasa means taking on trust. And so when you have a good friend in the monastic life, this was kind of considered normal almost, right? If you want to, if you need anything, please just go to my room and take whatever you like. And then you could go to that room and take whatever you like, as long as you felt confident that person wouldn't mind. And not many monks actually live up to that ideal, but Ajahn Brahm does. I know for a fact that he would not mind if I went into his room and I took something. Provided I needed it, right? If I took it out to sell it to someone, it wouldn't be wouldn't be so good. But as long as I needed it, of course, he would do that. And so this is one of those extraordinary qualities, of someone that I really respect so much. This idea of being generous all the time. And if you read the suttas again, you go back to the word of the Buddha. The Buddha always says that anyone who is really developed in mind, and by developed I mean they have deep meditation, they also have deep insight, they will always be very generous people. This is one of the ways of recognizing someone's spiritual development, is to see how generous they are as a person. And Ajahn Brahm fits that bill really, really well. It's just marvelous to see this. Another example, which many of you may have taken advantage of, have any of you been to Ajahn Brahm's cave in the monastery? You have? I can see a few nodding faces over there. Okay, good. Was that good? Yeah? Okay, okay, cool. So Ajahn Brahm has this policy. He has, I don't know if you know how he lives in the monastery. If you haven't been to the monastery yet, please come down one day and check it out. It's a really cool place to go. So the way Ajahn Brahm lives, he has a cave, a man-made cave, made out of granite rocks, kind of this beautiful thing with a mound of earth on top. And it's a very beautiful place, temperature is very stable in there, there's no sound or anything like that. And then he has just outside, he has a walking path, for doing walking meditation. And then next door to that, he has like an office. And that's kind of Ajahn Brahm's setup in our monastery. That's where he lives. And everything is very small, right? But that cave, which is Ajahn Brahm's living space, this is where he sleeps, this is where he meditates. First of all, if you go inside, you will notice there's almost nothing there. There's like a thin mattress on the floor, and there's like a bat on the wall. The bat is there because Ajahn Brahm likes bats. The story about kind of living in caves in Thailand and kind of liking the smell of bat poo. That's kind of one of the things about Ajahn Brahm. So there's a bat there, and then someone thought it would be very funny, so they bought him a cricket bat. There's a cricket bat next to it. There's a real bat and another bat. There's two bats. And so this is pretty much what's in there. And of course, there's a Buddha statue there and these kind of things. And so this is Ajahn Brahm's most private space. This is where he does everything that really matters, his meditation and everything. And yet, if you ever want to visit that cave, he says, please, anytime, just go in there. Please have a check. Not anytime go in there. If he's meditating, don't go in there then. But go in there when he's not there, right? And so the cave is basically like an open kind of contemporary museum almost of Ajahn Brahm. There's nothing much to see, of course, that's the whole point. It's an emptiness museum, right? This is the museum of emptiness. It's kind of a very Buddhist-themed museum, the emptiness museum. And so you are allowed into Ajahn Brahm's very, very personal space, and people go there all the time. And I say to Ajahn Brahm, doesn't it get a bit don't we get fed up with people going into your private space all the time? Yeah, they probably leave dirty footmarks and I don't know what they do in that cave. And Ajahn Brahm wants to share. And then he tells me that whenever someone has been inside that cave, he says the energy goes down. It gets a kind of worldly energy to it, because ordinary people haven't got that sense of peace and kindness and metta and all of these things that Ajahn Brahm builds up. He builds up the atmosphere in the cave. You know how places can have vibes? Places can have atmospheres, you know that, right? You go into it, it can feel good or it can feel bad. And his cave is like this place that feels really powerful when you go inside. And then all these lay people go in, 100 people, tourists coming from Malaysia and Singapore and Hong Kong and Indonesia and Europe and America, whatever, they kind of wander through and they check out the bats on the wall and they wonder what's going on. And you turn off, sometimes I take them in there, I turn off the light and you get really nervous when the light goes off, That's how Ajahn Brahm lives in there. And he says, that's okay, he says, Ajahn Brahm says, then after they have left, then I go in and I just recharge the atmosphere again. Isn't that kind of nice? So you just recharge it, And then when it's recharged, the atmosphere is right, and then the meditation takes off again. So please don't use that cave too kind of willy-nilly, at any kind of opportunity, because it does obviously detract a little bit from the atmosphere. But for Ajahn Brahm, giving is the most important thing here. Giving. Having compassion for people, understanding what people need, opening the door of his cave, opening the door of his heart, opening a door of anything that is available. Ajahn Brahm is one of those few people with zero secrets. He doesn't have any secret emails. He doesn't have any secret letters. Nothing. He's like open like a book. And it's kind of extraordinary to see that. And to the point where sometimes he just talks openly about everything. And people say, please don't share my secrets. If you don't want your secrets shared, don't tell Ajahn Brahm. So actually, if you tell him not to share his secret, he will keep that word, of course. But generally speaking, he's very, very open about things. So there's incredible compassion. And part of that compassion and part of the things that I also recognize from Ajahn Brahm very early on is his powerful ability to forgive. He's the most forgiving person I have ever met in my entire life. It's kind of extraordinary. He never holds on to a grudge, like even for a minute. It's like letting go straight away. And this is another, I think, very, very powerful sign of spiritual elevation, of religious elevation. Someone who has this ability not to hold on to anything here. And I know that from my personal experience, because when I was a young monk, I could be very argumentative. And one of the reasons I was argumentative, because when I came to the monastery, Ajahn Brahm in those days, he would teach Pali, which is the language of the Buddhist scriptures. And so I would learn all of these things fairly quickly. And as soon as you get a little bit of knowledge, you know that saying, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing? For me, it was really dangerous. I had a little bit of knowledge. Wow, it was dangerous. And so I would start arguing with Ajahn Brahm, right? But Ajahn, you say this, but the Buddha said this. Shouldn't you be following, practicing what the Buddha said? I didn't actually say that, but it was kind of implied, right? The Buddha said this, you say this. So how are we going to make of this? And so I was always a kind of argumentative, and I think that's a good thing, actually. I think it's okay not to be rude. Occasionally I probably was rude as well, actually, to be honest with you. I kind of feel a bit embarrassed sometimes, thinking back now at kind of the way I was in those early days. I'm glad not too many of you knew me in those early days. Wow, scary. But so I would be, sometimes I could feel that he didn't really want to discuss with me, right? Because he just wants to kind of be left at peace. He doesn't want to have all of these challenges all the time. But I would sometimes maybe be rude, and sometimes not be sensitive enough for his needs, or whatever it was, and do the wrong thing. And I thought that sometimes I would make an enemy out of him. I thought he might bear a grudge. But never, ever happened. Even at the times where I argued with him very fiercely, maybe over a long period of time, he would never carry a grudge. Immediately afterwards, he would be like I was his best friend. There was no problem. And I just found that so extraordinary. And after a while, I observed that it wasn't just with me. He was like that with everyone. Whether some people are truly rude, right? Some people are truly difficult to deal with. Some people are they were even worse than me, I thought. That's what I thought anyway. Maybe I was being a bit self-centered, but that's what it looked like to me. They're more rude than I am. But he will always let go. And I thought, that's so inspiring to see this. It is something about a mind like that, which is different from mine. I want to be like that. I don't want to hold on to things that people have said to me, even if it's just for my benefit. I don't want to do that, let alone the benefits of others. And the most powerful example of this is the most extraordinary thing that I think I've ever seen, was when Ajahn Brahm, after we did the famous ordination of nuns back in 2009, 22nd of October 2009, that's when we had the famous first ordination of bhikkhunis, of nuns here in Perth. And we had the 4 nuns ordaining, and 3 of them are still nuns, 1 of them has passed away, 3 of them are still bhikkhunis to the present day. And that was one of the most important and interesting things we did in Perth. I'm really glad we did that. It was a very powerful moment. But for Ajahn Brahm, it had very severe consequences. Immediately after that ordination, because many of you may not even know this story, maybe you do, but immediately afterwards he was summoned to Thailand. And when I use the word summoned, I use that on purpose. Summoned is kind of like being summoned by the king or something. It's like the hierarchy and your mother monastery. And when he got there, was all this large gathering of monks coming together. And those people who were there, that told me later on, it was like very fierce. It was like a fierce atmosphere there. And so they asked Ajahn Brahm, is it true that you have ordained nuns, like bhikkhunis, fully ordained nuns in our tradition? You know that we don't want that, and have you still done it? And he said, yes. And then they said, well, if you have done it, now you have to rescind it. You have to say that those women weren't really ordained after all. But Ajahn Brahm, he knows his stuff. He knows the Vinaya, the monastic rules. He understands the words of the Buddha really well. He can read the Pali language like Sanskrit and all of these kind of things. So he knows that if you have done an ordination ceremony in the right way, according to the rules laid down by the Buddha, a single person can't rescind it. That's illegal. You have done something right. It is done. And so he was in no position to take that back again. And so he said, sorry, I can't do that. You may not understand the Vinaya, but I understand the Vinaya. He didn't say that, but that's... So that was kind of the... Yeah, so he actually knew his side of things better than they did. And then they said, well, in that case, we have no choice but to kick you out. You can't be part of our group anymore. And you have to understand that this is kind of really a big thing, because all of these people that were in Thailand, this mother monastery, which was Ajahn Chah's monastery, Ajahn Chah was Ajahn Brahm's teacher originally, one of the greatest spiritual teachers in Thailand in the 20th century. These were all his friends. These were all his monastic companions. The Westerners, the Thais, from various parts of Asia, everyone was coming together, and everyone was saying, we are kicking you out. We don't want to talk to you anymore. Basically, it is fair to say it was a little bit like an excommunication, because basically we cut you off. We don't want to talk to you anymore after this. That's essentially what happened. So it's kind of serious, right? How would you react if your family said, okay, we're going to kick you out of our family, we don't want to see you ever again? Or the Buddhist society says, okay, we give you the kick, we have nothing more to do with you, please leave the country or whatever. What would you do if that happened? If those closest to you, the people who you really know the best in your life, if they want to get rid of you once and for all, and if you know very strongly in your heart that it wasn't really your fault. And so Ajahn Brahm comes back again to Perth. And he lands in Perth and he's a little bit quiet. You can understand maybe why he might be a little bit more quiet than usual. And so I ask him, I can't remember, sometime later, I ask him, how did it feel when you were kicked out from that? How did you react to that? What did you do with that? How did you deal with it? And he said to me that I only had one thought in my mind when they wanted to kick me out. And that thought was, did I do anything wrong? And he told me, I looked into my mind and I looked at what I had done, and I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. And the moment I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, I let it all go. And that's kind of extraordinary. You just let it all go. It wasn't an issue anymore. He knew the only thing that mattered to him was that he had done the morally right thing, the thing that was in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha and ordinary morality. That was the one thing that mattered. In other words, integrity, the practice of the spiritual path, not other people's reactions. And again, this is also an example of someone who is very, very highly developed. I'm in awe when I see this kind of things. Like, wow, how is that possible? When you can let go of all your relationships in the world, because the one thing that matters is the spiritual path. And later on, he told me that not so long afterwards, he had a dream. And in that dream, he gave one of these monks a hug. And again, isn't that kind of, I thought that's such a beautiful thing. In this dream, this is one of the monks who was kind of on the other side, one of his kind of old friends who no longer wanted to deal with him. He gave him a hug in a dream. And of course, what that means is that when he says, I let go, it wasn't superficial. It went to the very core of who he was as a being. Because maybe in our dreams, the truth comes out. For him, the truth was a real compassion, real letting go, and to the point of giving someone a hug. So that's kind of, again, the kind of Ajahn Brahm that I have come to know over the years. This extraordinary person, and this is why I take him as a teacher. Now one more thing, or maybe two more things, we'll see what happens. But one other thing, you will notice that I always talk about throughout how he is very erudite, how he knows the suttas, how he knows the monastic discipline, which is called the Vinaya, how he knows all of these kind of things. And so one of the things that I really appreciated when I came to Perth was the fact that he was able to teach the word of the Buddha. I wasn't really used to that either from where I had been before. And so in those days, Ajahn Brahm was much more interested in the suttas, the word of the Buddha, and all of these kind of things. And so at Bodhinyana Monastery, we would come together once a week. We still come together once a week. Nothing has changed at Bodhinyana Monastery for 30 years. Pretty much the same routine after 30 years. And then he would take a sutta. A sutta is like one talk or discourse by the Buddha. And he would take that and he would explain it. And I was in awe by the way he explained it. He would go through it. Then he would take a passage from another sutta somewhere else to illuminate this sutta he was doing now. Take a passage from another sutta over there. And then he would intersperse his own commentary into all of these things and kind of weave it together into this beautiful tapestry here, which kind of created this picture, the picture called the Dhamma. And that was what that was to me. And I was in awe, and I had this feeling of someone who really understands this Buddhist teachings, who really understand how they all connect together. Because remember, the teaching of the Buddha, they come from one insight, one understanding on the night of awakening of the Buddha. They are one thing, they are one picture, one reality. And then that reality has to be described, and it has to be described into how he articulated that insight. And that articulation of that insight then came out as what we have now, 10,000 pages or whatever, right? 10,000 pages of suttas. That's the articulation of that insight. And then you have to read those 10,000 pages and bring it back inside and then re-experience that insight again. So it's like the insight ends up with 10,000 pages, and if those 10,000 pages work, they recreate that insight later on. And that's kind of the feeling I had with Ajahn Brahm, that whole process happening, seeing how this was working in practice, this ability to enliven the suttas, bring them back to life, as if the Buddha himself was alive in the present day. And not just the fact that he created this beautiful tapestry, but the way he presented it, the character traits that come through, the peace, the genuineness, the confidence in what he's talking about. All of these things were very, very powerful and very present in the way he did teach the Dhamma in this particular way. And so this is kind of coming to the core of what Ajahn Brahm is about. This core of understanding these teachings in a very powerful way. And one of the things that will stand out about Ajahn Brahm when it gives these teachings is his absolute confidence and faith in these teachings. It's like, this is it. If the Buddha says this is the way it is, then that is the way it is. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. This comes above and before everything else in the world. The teaching of the Buddha is number one. Forget about everything else. That's kind of almost irrelevant. I don't even know if all of you even exist compared to the teaching of the Buddha. Maybe this is just an illusion. Teaching of the Buddha, not an illusion. Are you an illusion or are you real? I think you might be real. Okay, good. I got that one out of the way. That's good. So, and this is also very fascinating. One of the things that you see, but that is the result of that kind of confidence and faith that Ajahn Brahm has, is the kind of his willingness to challenge conventional wisdom. His willingness to challenge what almost everyone else in the world might think is true. He will always challenge that. He will not take the things in the world as important. The Dhamma is what matters. Most of us in ordinary human beings, we are trapped usually by the certain way that things are done now. You have this beautiful German word, the Zeitgeist. You know the word Zeitgeist? It's a beautiful word. It means like the spirit of the times, what things are like now, the present paradigm, the way the world operates now. This kind of the Zeitgeist, the way the world is. And we take this Zeitgeist far too seriously. We think that the way we think about the world, that is the way the world is. And so we tend to be trapped by that zeitgeist. And then when things change and kind of there's a new paradigm arising, then we get trapped by this new paradigm. It's kind of science and social institutions and ideas evolving, and every time they evolve, we attach and we kind of hold on to these new ideas. And most people are like that. But Ajahn Brahm is not. He takes many of these modern ideas that we may have about anything in the world, things about justice, or the latest kind of expression in whatever it is, in social justice or whatever it might be, and it always stands back from it, and it doesn't take it. He doesn't necessarily reject it, but it doesn't take it all that seriously either. To him, the Dhamma is what matters. The Dhamma is the important thing. Ajahn Brahm may look at some of the latest kind of scientific ideas in the world, and everyone else thinks they're really exciting. Ajahn Brahm will kind of dismiss it. They come up with a new idea tomorrow, so don't worry too much about it. And he sees this kind of larger picture. He pulls back from the world, and everything in the world is seen through the lens of the Dhamma, seen through the eye of the Buddha, if you like. That is what Ajahn Brahm is like, pulling back from the world. There's this one confidence, this one faith that is more important than anything else, and that is the confidence and faith in the teaching of the Buddha. Nothing else really comes close to that. And so this is kind of the Ajahn Brahm that I know, this extraordinary confidence in the Dhamma. And of course that confidence, it arises out of something. And you get this feeling that it arises out of, insight into those teachings. The ability to reach those kind of meditation the Buddha was talking about. And this comes back to the very beginning, kind of where I started out. When I started listening to Ajahn Brahm, and I heard him talking about the Dhamma, I heard him talking about the deepest aspects of Buddhism. And I was used to people, when people talked about the deepest aspects of Buddhism, it means things like the jhanas, the really deep samadhis that are available in Buddhist meditation. I'm talking about the insights of the awakening experiences on the Buddhist path, the most fundamental things, the most powerful things on the path. Most people in the world, when they talked about this, they talk about it with a sense of kind of as it's something theoretical, something kind of abstract, as something they are thinking about, something as if the mind is continuously evolving as they're thinking about these things. But Ajahn Brahm, he talked about these things in a very different way. There was a feeling of confidence, of certainty, an ability to explain what these things actually are using his own words. That really took me aback when I heard this. And I got this feeling that here is someone who actually understands these teachings in his own way, in a profound sense. He really knows what's going on. This was my feeling, and it may just be a projection because it's just my ideas, but it was this feeling of something really, really extraordinary going on when Ajahn Brahm did these things. And this is ultimately, which is the main reason why you take someone on as your teacher. This feeling of someone who has understood things personally, in a way that they then can deliver, they can inspire you, bring these things to life, as if the Buddha, again, is your teacher. And this is what makes someone like Ajahn Brahm so powerful and so beautiful and so extraordinary, inspiring when he is in that right mood and in the right space. His talks, one of the things I should say about Ajahn Brahm is that his talks, they vary enormously. They vary a lot. So when it comes here to Dhammaloka, it's kind of one kind of talk, stories, jokes, and that kind of stuff, which is kind of, I think that's actually really nice. And that's one of the reasons he does that, because Ajahn Brahm is a salesman of happiness, right? He has this lightness inside, and that lightness inside comes out in this kind of ability to tell stories and jokes and all these kind of things. But Ajahn Brahm also has another side, the side which is much more serious, the side where the Dhamma really comes out very deeply. And you don't get that as much here because it's a different venue, it's a different kind of place, but you hear it elsewhere. And so that side of Ajahn Brahm is, to me, the most important one. But so this is Ajahn Brahm, the teacher I know, and why I have always found Ajahn Brahm, to me, has been one of the greatest spiritual masters of the modern era. To me, there's very few people like Ajahn Brahm in the world. Look far and wide, very hard to find. And I'll tell you one last story before I stop. And I'm sorry, kids, taking a long time. You had to be a little bit older before you're really going to get these stories, but you can hang in there. So this last story is another story that I have told here before, but which I find, which to me was kind of signifies this whole idea of what spirituality is compared to worldliness, and what sets Ajahn Brahm apart from the world in general. And this is the story of when we had the big fire coming through Bodhinyana Monastery in 1991. This was before I came only in 1994. And this was like the hottest day on record in Perth. At that time it was 46.1 degrees, and apparently the day after was even hotter. But up to that point, it was the hottest day on record. 46.1, that's pretty rare, even for Perth, right? And it was 46.1 degrees. It was at the end of January. Yeah, the summer had already been going for quite a long time. Everything was really dry. And then there is a fire. Someone has lit a fire, thank you very much, somewhere. Yeah. And this fire is not that far from the monastery, and it's moving towards the monastery. And because it is so hot, and because everything is so dry, the trees kind of explode. You know what the eucalyptus, the gum trees can be like. They're full of gum, that's what they call gum trees, I suppose. And so they kind of explode when all that oil sort of starts to evaporate and actually lights. So they kind of explode. And so these explosions were coming closer and closer to the monastery here. And the fire brigade is there, and they say, well, get all the monks to assemble in the main hall. The main hall is like the assembly area. And then they all say, well, actually, we need to get ready to evacuate. So get your cars turned around the right direction, keys in the ignition, and get ready to leave. And then eventually, that's what they do. The fire brigade says, okay, now is the time to evacuate. And Ajahn Brahm told me at that moment, when the fire brigade said that, he knew at that moment that this was the end of the monastery. This was it. It would all burn down. This was like a really, really big fire. It was the hottest day on record. There was so much burnable stuff in the forest because of the dry season. And at this point, in 1991, Ajahn Brahm had just spent the previous 8 years working non-stop on this monastery. Literally like floodlights in the evening to be able to see what he was doing. Morning and afternoon, 7 days a week, day in, day out, basically for 8 years. So in many ways, you could say that Bodhinyana Monastery was Ajahn Brahm's life's work. This was what his life was all about, building up these beautiful Buddhist institutions right here or just outside of Perth. That was what his life had been about for at that time. And then, at that moment, he knew that his life's work would be destroyed. This fire was going to burn everything down. Many of the kutis still had wooden beams. The main hall had wooden beams. It would burn like tinder. It would burn just like that. And so then they leave. And they leave the monastery. And then I asked Ajahn Brahm, well, what happened? How did you deal with that when you were told that your life's work was going to go up in flames? What did you feel at that moment? And this is where it is really interesting, because the vast majority of people, if your life's work is going to be destroyed, you would despair. You will feel terrible about it. You feel like your life has been wasted. What did I do all of this for? And now everything is gone. This is how often people feel at this particular points in time. And Ajahn Brahm said, at that moment, when I knew the monastery was going to burn down, I let go, just like that. And I decided at that moment, he hadn't even left the monastery yet, I decided at that moment, when the monastery has burned down, tomorrow morning, when only there's ashes and embers left, I will come back and I will start from scratch. Tomorrow morning, the day after, no mourning, no sadness, no pity, nothing like that. Straight back to work the day after. And I asked Ajahn Brahm, how is that possible? How can you do that? What kind of human being can just let go so completely and just continue the very next day? What kind of attitude do you have to do that? And this is kind of the critical point. And this is what distinguishes the worldly mind from the spiritual mind. Ajahn Brahm said, I didn't build that monastery to get a result. I didn't build that monastery to have a monastery, to produce something. I built that monastery because it was an act of kindness, an act of compassion for the world, an act of generosity for everyone. That is why I built that monastery. I built it because it was the right thing to do, because I was building up spiritual qualities in myself. And hopefully, by doing that, I could also do something good for other people. But the fact that the monastery burnt down just meant I had more opportunity to do acts of kindness. I had more opportunities to be kind and generous. So why would I not go back the very next day and start from scratch? I was just continuing the project that had been temporarily kind of halted by this fire going through the property. And I thought, wow, that is such a beautiful way of thinking about life in general. If we think about life in that, then it doesn't matter so much what happens in the world. It doesn't matter so much if there's a war even. It doesn't matter so much what is going on, because we are living a spiritual life. We're living a life for the purpose of being kind, compassionate, generous, peaceful, meditators, and all of these kind of things. Yes? Yes. All of it, that is what we're doing. And because that is what we're doing, that can never be destroyed. That can always be built on into the future, regardless of what happens in our life. And that is what Ajahn Brahm taught me through that simile, basically an extended simile of the monastery maybe burning down. Of course, the monastery never burnt down. So Ajahn Brahm was wrong about that. Yeah? So fortunately he was wrong about that. And then next day when they came back, well, they could just carry on as usual. Well, not quite as usual, because the monastery was like a moon landscape. There was no greenery whatsoever. All the trees were brown. The ground was brown. But all the buildings were pretty much untouched. So that's kind of another miracle for another time. That's another story. Why were none of the buildings touched by the fire? Is that interesting? Okay, next time I'm here, come back to hear this story here. Okay, everyone. So wonderful to see you all again. That's my little talk for you this evening here. All right, so now we can open up to questions from the floor, first of all. And then we can take them from outside afterwards, if there's any questions going on. Any comments, questions? Prem, Bill, over here. Prem is lifting up his hands.
Thank you, Ajahn. Ajahn Brahm is well known for flying around halfway around the world and then straight away giving a talk for 1,000 people with the same enthusiasm and all the ability that he would have if he had rested. Do you think it is just the meditation that he brings up his energy and stamina after such a long physical strain, or does he have some other superhuman qualities, I wonder?
Say again?
Superhuman qualities. Powers.
I think there's many things. I think there's a number of things there. One of the things is the meditation, right? Sometimes Ajahn Brahm can just sit down and go into deep meditation very, very quickly. But even for him, it depends on how tired he is. And if he is very tired, his meditation will not be the same. I know. I sit next to him. I know what it is like. So that's one part of it. Sometimes he can get very deep meditation. He can use that to recover very quickly from jet lag and all kind of things. Another aspect is just he brings the Dhamma with him, wherever he goes, and as soon as he starts to talk even, that reminds him of the Dhamma, and the joy comes out, the happiness comes out with Ajahn Brahm. And so he builds up the qualities within through his conduct without, through his talking of the Dhamma. And sometimes you can tell Ajahn Brahm, he's giving a talk, and he's getting so much joy and happiness while he's giving the talk, that if he's not careful, he will have to stop giving the talk and just go into deep meditation straight away. This is Ajahn Brahm for you, right?
Yes.
How many people can do that while you're giving a talk? And so all of these things enable him to do things that sometimes can seem a bit kind of superhuman to others. I mean, these days he has to slow down a lot because of getting older, and because he is a little bit overweight, unfortunately, and he is not in super duper good shape. But
just a couple of days ago, the day before the Katina, he came from Singapore in the midnight, and he went there the previous night. There's 2 nights of lack of sleep, and he was as bright and shining like on the Katina day.
That's
half a day he spent.
That's the thing.
And we were talking about
absolutely. So it's good.
Delivered better than any other time.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajahn.
Please keep it short, Eddie.
Ajahn Brahmali. This is not a question.
It's not a question. That's a bad start.
This is
a very bad
comment. It's a comment on Ajahn Brahm. You're talking about Ajahn Brahm.
Keep it very short. Please.
Ajahn Brahm is a very successful monk. the reason for his success, from my view, okay, is that he's very easygoing.
Yeah.
He's very accommodating. He will not say no to you. He's always giving, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so with these good qualities, he's able to draw crowds, you know. That's why he's successful.
Yeah.
BSWA is drawing crowd from
Yeah.
worldwide. You know, it's from him.
Absolutely.
That good energy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if he would be, say a monk would be like a stern, you know, people will run away.
Yeah. Thank you, Eddie. That's a very good point.
So that's his good quality, this thing, and we're happy to have him.
Good. Thanks, Eddie. That was nice and short. I appreciate that. So, yeah. And also a good point, by the way. So, yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah? Okay.
My question is about integrity.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about those qualities, one of those big ones was Ajahn Brahm and his integrity that he had towards the Dharma and his path. And as a layman, how can we begin to develop that integrity, for that Eight Noble Path, and what would you recommend?
Right. Just start with the most obvious things. Yeah. Start with things like the 5 precepts. Number 1, start with that one. That's kind of the beginning of integrity. And then you expand it more generally to right action and right speech. It's already quite hard, actually. If you can do that with reasonable integrity, you're doing really, really well. So the idea is to avoid the bad side of speech and action, do the good side of speech and action. Yeah, and once you get that together, then you can start working on your mind. Get your mind really purified. Yeah, think only good thoughts. That's kind of the super integrity. Yeah, when all your thoughts are kind of. This is kind of the thing about Ajahn Brahm. He has this he's very high-minded. He always thinks the best of people. Yeah, so even if you do something really weird or crazy, he will think the best of you. He will see the goodness in you. So this is kind of. So that is that integrity that you want to kind of live up to, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Hello, Shamari. Thank you so much. Yeah. I wanted to. I'll see you tomorrow, or afterwards. Just a quick word. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right, everyone. So this is now from online. So we have from Wolfram Gabi in Germany. Hello, Wolfram. You are a regular. So nice to see you again. I recognize your name. And it's really, I must admit, it's very nice that we can actually take questions from people around the world. I think that's really cool. And one of the things that makes this Buddha society really give it something extra. Okay, your question is, I feel good with my meditation for many years. After several I lost it all. Operations maybe, or something. I have to start from the beginning. Also lost joy in life and meditation. Why and what to do? Okay, so there's a number of things going on, and sometimes when you start out your meditation, you have like what you might call beginner's luck. Yeah, you start out, you have some idea of the world, you do things in a certain way. But the foundation is not very strong necessarily. The foundation is not based on real right view and real understanding of what the Dhamma is about. And because the foundation is not strong, it can collapse like a house of cards very easily. And so don't despair. What this means is just that you have to build it up from scratch, from the idea of right view, thinking in the right way, building up all the right qualities. But I can guarantee you, if you are able to purify yourself, to live well, to basically be a good person, be a good human being, treat other people with kindness and all these good things, it will come back again. Because this is the nature of this path. If you're able to build up the compassion and the loving kindness and all of these qualities in your mind, then the nature of those qualities are that they lead to samadhi. So all you have to do is just to take a step back, and ask yourself, what isn't actually working? What are the qualities that are missing in your life? If you feel no joy, can you be more kind to others? Can you be more generous? Can you develop some compassion, understanding for the world? There's a lot of need for compassion in the world right now. Some are suffering going around everywhere. And understanding that no one is really in charge. We're all just little human beings trying to do what we can in this world, and no one really understands what they're doing. Least of all, many of the leaders, I feel sometimes, they're completely blind, no idea what's going on. And so then you are on the right track. The fact that you had good meditation before is not a grounds for despair, it's grounds for understanding that the foundations were not very strong here. Okay, next one is from Pankaj Vidate. There's no country, but hello Pankaj. How to be motivated every day and what to do when feel life has problems. So the way to be motivated every day is to have a right view. Is to understand that the only thing really worth doing in this life is the practice of spiritual path. Everything else is shallow, everything else is superficial, everything else doesn't get you anywhere. That's kind of the point. The spiritual path is the only thing that actually gets you somewhere, because it changes you psychologically and inside, and you become a different person. And that different person is the one you want to be. And that is the idea behind this. So remember this kind of right view about what actually matters, what actually is important. And as you do that, you will be able to motivate yourself every day. You should get to the point when it's almost like you become fearful of saying something bad to somebody. You become fearful of having a bad thought of somebody, because you know that that is taking you backwards on the spiritual path. So to be able to get that right view, come back to these beautiful teachings of the Buddha. Read some of the suttas. Listen to Dhamma teachings that inspire you, that lift you up, that are in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha. And as you do that, you will get lifted up and you will be able to sustain this path. That is the right way. The hardest part with Buddhism is not understanding what to do. It's actually quite simple. Just be kind. Okay, it's simple to know what to do, but it's hard to actually put it into practice. And so you need to sustain this. Sustain, commit again and again and again. And the only way to do that is to come back to these teachings. Try to understand more deeply what they are about. Try to understand this is what life is about. All the other stuff doesn't really matter. You have to do it, but you do it through a kind of spiritual filter, so that everything you do, even the worldly things, become spiritual as a consequence. Something like that is what you have to do here. Okay, question number 4. This is from a fellow called Grant Day. Hello, good day, Grant. Grant Day, good day, Grant. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize for being stupid. Why should we forgive? Why is it important to forgive? I'm currently living in Saudi Arabia. Okay, all right. We love everything about these talks. Why should we forgive? You should forgive, number 1, because it makes you happy. It is miserable to go around with grudges and negativity and all kind of stuff. You are the first person who benefits from forgiveness. That is why you should forgive. If you want to make progress on the spiritual path, you need to forgive right away. I just came back from Hong Kong a few days ago, and whenever you travel, you meet people, and they tell you stories. And there was one lady who said she was so upset with her brother-in-law. She hadn't spoken to him for 20 years. I shouldn't exaggerate, 20 years. And I told her, forgive now. 20 years is way too long. What are you doing? I didn't use quite those words. That's kind of what I was thinking. And so please don't do that sort of crazy thing. It destroys your life and the life of others. More importantly, I think you can probably understand that. More importantly is how to forgive. Because sometimes it may seem as if people in the world don't deserve forgiveness. They are bad actors or bad people. And the answer to that is very simple. The answer to that is that most people in the world do not know what they are doing. Most people in the world are not in charge of themselves. They are conditioned. This is where the Buddhist idea of non-self comes in very handy. And if someone is conditioned to do bad things, to do stupid things, they're not really responsible. They're only responsible insofar as they have to reap the bad consequences of that, but they're not really responsible because they don't really know. They can't do otherwise, really. We are trapped in our personalities. If I tell someone not to be who you are, be someone else, you can't do that. That's a trap. We have to follow these habits that have been conditioned into us over lifetimes or whatever it might be. So everyone should be forgiven. In fact, not only should you forgive, but you should have compassion for those who do bad things, because they don't know what they're doing. What they really are doing is causing suffering for other people, but even more so for themselves. The people who do truly heinous crimes in this world, they also have to face the consequences of that. So you should have compassion for the bad people in the world, because they have no idea what they're doing. Then you are on the right track. Then you know why you should forgive and how to forgive. And come back to these kind of teachings again and again and again. Because this I don't know if you even understood fully what I was saying. It takes a while for these things to really become clear before you know what's going on. But they are based on very fundamental Buddhist teachings. All right, last question. This is a question from the USA. Hello, USA here. Hi, Ajahn. Sila feels good. Okay, great. So you are already doing really well. Thank you. But that Sila hasn't led to good meditation. I have faith, but how far do I need to go? I'm wondering when good meditation will arise. Right, so don't worry about when good meditation will arise, because that is just being impatient and being restless. And if you are being impatient and being restless, you may never get that meditation. So put that to one side. Live the Noble Eightfold Path to the best of your ability, and then when meditation comes, if it comes, it will come at the right time, when you are ready, because you're putting in all the right causes. So I will expand a little bit on those causes so as to optimize your chance of getting good meditation. Number one, Sila is very profound. It is not just about keeping the 5 precepts or whatever, it's about being truly kind human being, generous, compassionate, and all of these kind of things. Never having ill will towards anyone. That is it's a very high bar to clear, and very for a lot of people it takes a long time to be able to clear that bar. But if you can do that, move in that direction, it will come together. The other part that makes for good meditation is right view, because right view gives you the right values. And if you have the right values, you will reject those things in life that are not truly meaningful. And you may not reject them entirely, but you won't be preoccupied with them. You won't think about them. One of the biggest problems in meditation is you sit down and you think about all kinds of stuff. Your work, your family, your problems, whatever it is that you have to do, all of this kind of goes through your mind. Why do you think about those things? Because they are important to you. If you understand things and you value things in the right order, you will not think about those things anymore. It's really as simple as that. And that's why someone who is spiritually really gone a long way, they have no problems being peaceful. They don't think very much at all. Not much thinking is going on in their mind. This is one of the signs of being kind of gone a long way on the spiritual path. So those are the 2 things I would recommend. So, best of luck. Okay, everyone, that is all for tonight. So let's just pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.